So welcome to the Industrialization lecture. So that we're picking up right after the Settling the West. So we've done a few decision-making activities. We played that game that we did in class, kind of pretending to be a capitalist and practicing some vertical integration. And we'll get into more of that in a bit. So you should have your notes, and as we go through, you're going to notice that what I have on the PowerPoint is different than what you have on your notes sheet. Part of the reason for that is to make sure that you're all actually listening to the lecture and not just clicking through and stealing the information off the slides. So you got to listen to me at least a little bit. Okay, so another example, my PowerPoint looks different than yours. Yours just says the rise of industry. Mine says the rise of industry and has all these cool images. So if we were going to do an essay, which we are not, you would keep in mind the question, did industry improve society? So that's kind of the big question we're going to be thinking about in this unit. However, for the sake of what you're going to be doing a test, not an essay. So if we just kind of look through, we have the pretzels, we have the little pumpkin things, we have M&Ms, Hershey Kisses, pencils, Pop-Tarts, crayons, all of that, paper clips, toothpicks. So if you look on your sheet, you're going to have the numbers 1 through 5 and the letter A directly corresponding to what I have up here. It's going to be a little bit hard to fit in National Transportation and Communication Network, so abbreviate that to fit it into number 4. One of the things to think about as we kind of walk through this is the abundance of raw materials. I'm going to show you a little map in a second. Okay, so if you look at your notes, you're going to have silver, which is coal. Now the coal was found mainly in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Illinois, and Michigan. We have in the Arizona and New Mexico territories, we have copper. So that's that next thing on your little key sheet. Then we have iron, which is found in Pennsylvania. You can see my mouse go a little roundy thing right there. And then we have limestone, which was found kind of all of northern Michigan. And then we have petroleum, which is that red thing, soft timber, and other types of timber found up at the top. If we were going to go through your sheet, it would be coal, which is the gray, copper, which is that orange, iron, which is the purple, limestone, which is the beige tan color, red is petroleum, green is the softwood timber, and the yellow is kind of other timbers, other types of woods up north in Minnesota. So around this time, 1865 to 1900, you can see that the iron isn't that big, but it upticks around this period that we're studying. Same can be said for petroleum and coal. You can see that almost blatant exponential growth, that classic exponential growth curve as it shoots up during this time. Now, all of these things went towards manufacturing through helping industry grow and helping the nation as a whole grow. Now, number 2 is a large workforce, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And this just, in general, this section is really setting up what we're going to be talking about in the rest of this lecture. So what caused the U.S. to become an industrial nation? We have natural resources, a large workforce, new inventions, national transportation and communication networks. Good luck fitting that in. I couldn't really figure out how best to move stuff around in the notes that you have there, so abbreviate that the best you can. Then we have free enterprise. Now that's free enterprise or free trade mainly within the states, within the United States, and there were high tariffs on everything else. So high tariffs on international trade. So we have high international tariffs there. Now, kind of along with the theme of natural resources. Now, if we watch this guy, he's going to light this. And boom. So now what he's doing right there is he is burning off the natural gas, or the methane that is also coming up with the oil. Remember, you can actually put a match out in diesel fuel or kerosene. It needs to be sprayed out for it to really ignite, or in diesel's case, pressurized, or kind of that type of thing. Although they can burn with high intensity, what he's doing right here again, boom, burning off the natural gas element to it. So we have oil, coal, copper, iron, limestone, timber, and most of that came from the West. Now I know what you're thinking, well, how did they get it over here? Railroads, which we've spent a lot of time talking about, but this is kind of what helped the railroad industry boom at this time. So now one of the things that it's also important to know is the GNP, or the gross national product, tripled this time. And I think it's important for you to understand what the GNP, or in this case, in the clip that I'm going to show you, GDP really is. So here we go.
Inflation rate. The most important measure of an economy is gross domestic product, or GDP. GDP is the value of all final goods and services produced within a country's border in a specific period of time, usually a year. Now, there are some details worth mentioning. GDP doesn't include every transaction that's in the economy. For example, if you buy a used domestic car, it doesn't count towards GDP because nothing new is produced. Now, that same logic applies to buying financial assets like stocks, or when one company buys another company. For example, when Google bought YouTube. Those don't count towards GDP because no new good or service was produced. Also, GDP often doesn't include illegal activity, since drug dealers don't usually report their sales to the government, or non-traditional economic activity like household production. For example, if a plumber charges someone $100 to fix their hot water heater, that counts towards GDP. When he fixes his own water heater, that doesn't count towards GDP. Here's a list of countries organized by GDP. Notice that GDP is measured in dollars, not in the raw number of things produced. If we analyze just the raw number, then a country that produced 5 million thumbtacks would look like they're doing just as well as a country that produced 5 million cars. But there's also a problem with using the dollar value of stuff produced. It's inflation. Right? If two countries produce the same amount of cars, but one has higher prices, then that country is going to have a higher nominal GDP, or GDP not adjusted for inflation. To get a more accurate idea of the health of the economy, economists look at real GDP, which is GDP adjusted for inflation.
It's worth noting, though, that GDP can be a little problematic. I mean, not all countries measure GDP in the same way. And in recent years, some European Union countries have started experimenting with counting underground markets, like the sex trade and drug trade, as part of the total. In fact, GDP isn't even that old an idea. According to Robert Froyen, during the Great Depression, economic decisions were made, quote, on the basis of such sketchy data as stock price indices, freight car loadings, and incomplete indices of industrial production. The fact was that comprehensive measures of national income and output did not exist at the time. The Depression, and with it the growing role of government in the economy, emphasized the need for such measures and led to the development of a comprehensive set of national income accounts. So GDP was invented to account for national income, and it may not necessarily provide a complete picture of a country's economy. But for the moment, it's what we've got. So that's economic growth, or at least one way to look at economic growth.
All right, so a large workforce. The large workforce was kind of a two-parter. We have larger families, so some of my family members come from families of 4 or 5, and their generation came from 5, 6, 7, in some cases 8. I have an uncle who had 12 brothers and sisters. He was the youngest of 13, so it's kind of intense to think about. But we have large families and large numbers of immigrants that are coming into the country. So kind of what does this actually mean? So if you notice on your notes, we have these more people working, blah, 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 blah. So let me show you what to do for these notes. And this is how I'm going to grade you. I'm going to be looking for this specific element that you've included. So we have more people, and more people means there are more people able to work or working. Now, if you have more people working, you should have more things made. Now, as I'm walking through this, draw those arrows. So more people leads to more people working. More people working leads to more things being made. More things being made leads to more money being made. More money being made means more money to be spent. And again, and this is kind of a key point, if there's more money to spend, there's more money to make more things. And if there's more money to spend, which means more money to be made, more people can be paid to work in the larger work. We can kind of see how all of these elements form this cycle of growth. Now, once one of those things starts to slow down, you can reach a recession. But overall, you can see this cycle starting to take place, and it picks up momentum. Think like a snowball. It starts to roll downhill and collect momentum as it goes. So that is kind of the large workforce cycle. Now on your notes, draw these arrows out. Again, this is how I'm going to be grading it. So at this time, we had a ton of new inventions. We have the typewriter being developed in 1873. We have the automatic lubricator for the steam engine, 1872. The phonograph in 1877. Henry Ford develops his first car, and he gets a bunch of investors to give him money. And now what was interesting about his thing, which I know, again, most of you don't care about, but maybe some of you care about, is with Henry Ford's car, he was not the first person to invent a car, but the first person to invent a cheap car. So little side note there. And then eventually in 1903, Wilbur and Orville Wright make the first successful powered flight in, as you know, Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Under the first solid bullet point, right, telephone. Who invented the telephone? Alexander Graham Bell, building off a lot of what we've known about inventions and about how telegraphs work. He invents the telephone, kind of a play on using the same systems as he would even go on to use the same telegraph wires and instead use them to send electrical signals and send telephone calls. And it's actually kind of interesting because even though our Wi-Fi could be done using different systems and our internet could be done using different systems, we actually still use telephone cables and telephone wires and stuff like that to send some of those same signals. And then, as most of you know, Thomas Edison inventing the light bulb in 1879.
Thomas Edison did not invent the light-giving electrical device. He didn't even invent the glass bulbs with glowy filaments in them. He did, however, start selling a practical light bulb in 1880. The first electric light, called an arc lamp, was created by Humphrey Davy 78 years earlier, but it didn't last very long and was way too bright. People tried making filaments out of platinum for a while, but platinum is, it's platinum. It costs a lot of money. In 1850, Joseph Swan realized that carbonized paper was a better and more plentiful material for filaments and started making light bulbs. But he had trouble making them efficient and long-lasting. Swan eventually landed on cellulose filaments in the early 1880s, which lasted a good long while. And around the same time, Edison found that carbonized bamboo could last for 1,200 hours. In 1883, Swan's company merged with Edison's, and the rest was mostly marketing.
Hank, nobody wants to hear from you right now. Shut up. Okay, back to my lecture, since this is my lecture. So under light bulb, or under the next solid bullet point, write light bulb, and under the next clear bullet point, write Thomas Edison. So what were the outcomes of this? Outcome number one, there was an economic boom. We have people being able to light their houses, so we're selling this idea, we're selling this idea, we're selling new cars, we're selling new phonographs invented by Thomas Edison 2 years prior to inventing the light bulb. And of course, we sold and traded these ideas. Now, this is one of the things that America becomes most famous for, is trading and selling inventions or intellectual property.